Okay, we're going to talk about printing in AutoCAD. Printing is not straightforward, whether it's AutoCAD, CATIA, SolidWorks, Inventor, or other 3D or 2D softwares. It all depends on your settings, what are you printing, what areas are you printing, are you connected to a plotter, to a desktop inkjet, a printer. So it's not straightforward. You have to check your settings and also decide on what you're going to print. Okay, so first of all, what are we going to print? Okay, what region of your drawing are you going to print? You have the option to print what's on display, prints everything that you can see at the moment in the drawing area. In other words, what's showing on your computer screen. Extents, it'll zoom fit everything and print it on your sheet. I'll demonstrate these in a few minutes. We have limits. So you have a drawing limit, which you set up, and there's also a default, and it'll only print everything that's inside the limits, this imaginary boundary. And we have window, so you can window capture the areas that you want to print. Okay, so let's first take a look at display. So display is simply what's on your computer screen. So I'm going to go to an AutoCAD file. So if this is what's on my screen, this is what it'll print. If I zoom in, then it'll print what's currently on my screen. Okay, so that is the display option when you're ready to plot. Another option is extents. So it's everything that you've drawn will be zoomed and it'll be fitted inside your sheet that you're going to plot on or print on. Okay, so to find out what are my extents, all I have to do is double click on the wheel. Double click, and these are my extents. If I have something out in space, for example, and I double click, these are my extents now. Every single element that you've drawn, including text, dimensions, liters, etc. Okay, if I delete my circle and double click again, these are my extents now. Okay, so it'll print, extents, and zoom fit it into your sheet size. Okay, next one is limits. So there is an imaginary, I shouldn't say imaginary, but a boundary that you cannot see. And these are your drawing limits. There is a default. You can always change it by typing in limits in the command line. Now, why do you need limits? Limits is important for printing, if you know what the limits are. And also, sometimes you want to put things outside of the limits area. What you do want to include inside is things that you want to print at the very end. Once you're done with your drawing, you want everything that you want to print inside your limits. Sometimes you'll have an extra view or a backup view, which you want to set outside the limits. If you're not sure if you want to delete a view or update it, make a copy and place it outside your limits. Or sometimes you can put notes for yourself. So at the end of the day, I might end up putting a note to myself. Hey, don't forget to dimension the whole pattern in the top view. I can put a note to myself outside the drawing limits. Or maybe put a note for somebody else that may take over your drawing. Leave some notes outside the drawing limits using the text command. Oh, so before we go to the next slide, let me demonstrate limits in AutoCAD. So what are my limits? Okay, so all you have to do is type in limits in the command line, enter, and my limits are at 0, 0. So where is 0, 0? 0, 0 is where our axes intersect, the green y-axis and the red x-axis. And z is normal to the screen. So this is my 0, 0. Here are my coordinates. As I move the cursor, you can see my coordinates. I'm trying to get as close to 0, 0 as I can. I can always turn on snap. It'll snap to 0, 0. Okay, if you don't see your coordinates in the status bar, you can always turn them on by clicking on the last icon on the status bar. You can turn off coordinates, turn on, turn off, turn on. Okay, so what are my limits? So it's telling me the lower left corner is at 0, 0, the origin. So there it is. And I hit enter, and it'll show me the next one. Next one is at 11 by 8.5, so it's 11 across by 8.5, so somewhere around here, right? So this is my drawing area, and we cannot see it. So one way around this is to draw a rectangle. So I can draw a rectangle and type in 0, 0 for my bottom left corner, 0, 0, enter. And for the opposite corner, I'm going to type in 11, 8.5 and enter. And there's my drawing limits. And typically you want your views to be centered inside your limits, or you can spread it out and fill up the empty areas. Okay, so those are my limits. You can always change them, by the way. So delete. I can go back to limits, enter. And you typically want to leave the first corner at 0, 0 at the origin. Then hit enter. If you want a larger size, like a B size, you can go 17 by 11. Okay. If you're okay with the default, just hit enter and you can exit. Or hit escape on the keyboard. All right, so let's zoom in and let's go back to the next slide. Okay, so window. You can also window capture. So you can window capture the area that you want to print. Okay, I'll demonstrate that in a few minutes. All right, so another thing before we go to plot, you can choose to turn off. I shouldn't say turn off, but you can choose not to print a layer. Okay, a good example is you don't want to print the construction layer. So you can click on the little icon and it'll turn into an icon with the red circle. And it will not plot this construction layer even if it's on. Another one is you want to turn off, or I should say you don't want to print, is the 0 layer. So I'll demonstrate that in layer properties. So let's go over to layer properties in AutoCAD. Okay, so here's layer properties. Make sure you are in the home tab. Go to layer properties. And I already have mine off as far as printing. See the construction layer? Even if it's on, you can either choose to print it or not to print. Same thing with the 0 layer. I don't have anything in the 0 layer, but I don't want to print anything. Just in case, I'll just deactivate the print option. And there's the default layer of def points, which is grayed out, which will not print. Okay, so once you know what you want to print and not want to print, you can go ahead and exit. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start printing. Okay, so to print, you can either click on this icon or go to the AutoCAD icon, click on it, go to print. And if you want, you can go to plot from there. You can just go straight to print. And you'll have your page setup window pop up. So let's go to that. Let's go to AutoCAD. All right, so I'll go the long way. Click on the AutoCAD icon. Click on print. Okay, so notice the default is 8.5 by 11 letter size. That's an A size. You may be able to print a B size, 11 by 17, if you have a personal inkjet printer or a small plotter. All right, so one option that you want to pick is fit to paper. Okay, you want to be able to fit your drawing onto the paper size you choose. In this case, 8.5 by 11. If you need to change the orientation from landscape to portrait or vice versa, go to properties and you'll be able to change the orientation of your sheet. Now, I currently cannot hit properties or preview because I don't have a printer selected or plotter. Okay, so I'm not connected to anything right now, so I'll just try and trick AutoCAD into selecting a plotter. Okay, so I went with the plotter. And what is a plotter? So let me show you in the internet. Okay, so plotters, they're about the height of a typical plotter. It has a height of a desk. Okay, so your typical desk height is about the size of your plotter, and they come in different sizes. So the ones that you see on the left are 24-inch. Okay, so these are 24-inch, meaning the sheet size, which comes in a roll. Just imagine a roll of toilet paper, except this is a big roll of paper for plotting on. You place the roll inside and you feed it through, and it'll as much length as you need. So this is a 24-inch length sheet, but your typical size is 36. Okay, so here's a good example. This is think of this looks like a length of 36 inches. And as long as you have paper on that roll, you can print as long as you want. All right, so if you're dealing with the C size, D, E, F, J size, you definitely want to use a plotter. All right, so let's go back to printing. Okay, so make sure you fit your drawing to your sheet size. Okay, so we have the option of display. Okay, so I want to print what's currently on display. I hit preview. Even though the magenta lines are showing, watch, it's not going to show it in the preview. 3, 2, 1, preview. Okay, so this is currently what's on my screen. Notice it's not showing the top half of the top view. Okay, so this is currently what's on my screen. And it doesn't print, it's not going to print the magenta lines because I deactivated the plot option for the construction layer. Okay, and to close the preview, just click on the little X here. Okay, so once again, you can see my display. Okay, so that's the display option. Next one is your extents. So it'll zoom fit everything. Extents, hit preview. So it'll zoom fit all your geometry inside the 8.5 by 11 sheet size. Okay, so that's extents. Let's exit the preview. Okay, limits. So my limits are 8.5 by 11, or I should say 11 by 8.5. Go to limits. Preview. And we'll see a different. So these are my limits. Remember, it's from 0, 0 to 11 by 8.5. So these are my drawing limits. Okay, exit. And the last option we have here is window. Window capture. Once I click on window capture, it's waiting for me to capture something. Let me zoom out a little bit. So if I wanted to only print the top view, let me turn off my snap option. There it is. So if I just want to print the top and front view, I can just window capture that area and ignore the right side view. And once I click, it'll take me back to the plot window, and click preview. And it's only going to show the top and front view and ignore the side view. Okay, so let's go ahead and exit. All right, so let's go back to our slides here. Okay, so pick what do you want to print. You want to print the display, the limits, the extents, to do a window capture. Here's the preview. And you want to center your plot and also fit to paper. I actually forgot to turn mine on. Center the plot. Should have done that. I'll get different looking previews. Okay, there's also an extension here. So here I could have changed it for portrait or landscape or vice versa. Or I can always go to properties. Let me go to the next slide. Here's a better representation of my window. Again, I should have hit center, fit to paper. What do you want to print? Display, extents, limits, or window. And this is an extension here if you want more, and it'll extend, it'll open up the window some more. And here's the preview. So let's go ahead and click on this icon here. So mine's already extended. Let me go ahead and collapse it. So this is what it looks like on the slide. Okay, so if you want to extend it, Click on this option to extend and you have more options. Okay, and again, as I mentioned, printing is not straightforward. It can be a little frustrating. Let's go back to the slides. Okay, so once you click on extend, you have more options. And if you're able to, check these options here. Plot object line weights. So if you have a line thickness, a line weight, you want to show them so they don't all look thin. You want the object lines to look thicker than the center lines and hidden lines and dimension lines. Turn on this option. If you can click on this option, plot with plot styles, plot paper space last, and also you want to go to monochrome, or else it's gonna print your light colors like red hidden lines or green center lines. It's gonna print them. If you print in black and white, it's gonna print them as a very thin gray line. So go to the monochrome option, so it'll show up darker and not thin to the point that it's hard to see. Or I should say gray, where it's very difficult to see. Okay, let's go back to AutoCAD. Okay, so go ahead and select those options. Plot object line weights, plot styles. Oh, and I cannot pick the other one. Okay, so pick the ones that you're able to. And go to monochrome. And yes. Okay, so let me go ahead and go to extents again and hit preview and see if it looks a little different on my preview. And see, now you see thicker lines. See, the object lines are a lot thicker. Okay, so we chose the option of line weights. And also by choosing monochrome, these light colors like green and red will not come out as gray when you print in black and white. It'll give it a nice dark black color versus a gray color that'll be hard to see. Okay. Okay, once again, as I mentioned, if you want to plot on a larger sheet size, you want to definitely go to a plotter. So currently I have a plotter selected, but I'm not connected to one. But I do want to show you that when you go to an e-plot or plotter, you have a lot more options. So you have the ANSI, American National Standards Institute standard, 8.5 by 11. So that's the A size. You also have the International Standards Organization's sheet sizes. You also have architecture and the ANSI. I typically go with the ANSI for sheet size and mechanical drawing. So we have E size, 34 by 44. We have D size, 34 by 22. C size, 22 by 17. B size, 17 by 11. And the A size, 11 by 8.5. Okay, so when you click to a plotter, you have more options. If you just are going to print to your small printer on your desk, you're not going to have all these options. All right, let's go back to the slides. Okay, and don't forget A size is 8.5 by 11, B size 11 by 17, C size 17 by 22, D 22 by 34, and E is 34 by 44. Okay, I've already discussed viewport, so I'll just ignore this slide. Let's go on to the next one. Now you may also want to print your layout. Okay, so I did not mention layout. Let's go to layout and we'll end this lecture for today. Okay, let's go back to print. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to just cancel it. And I forgot to mention you have the option here to go to portrait or landscape if you like, so you can see. And you have the preview. Okay, I'm going to cancel. I'm going to go to layout tab. Okay, so go to layout tab. Okay, so we do have a viewport. Here's my viewport. So I can just double click inside and I can center my drawing, and I can go with 1:1, full scale, 1:1. There it is, 1:1. There's my scale, 1:1, full scale, actual size, and I'm just going to double click outside the viewport. Okay, now I can zoom into the sheet in and out. All right, so now I can bring in my title blocks. So you do have a title blocks file. I'll go ahead and email it to you again. So here's the title blocks file. So this is 8.5 by 11, A size. If you want a B size, larger, C, D, E size, largest one we have here. Let's go back to an A size. Okay, so I can click on my block here. So this title block was created as a block. I'm going to hit Control C on the keyboard to copy. I'll go back to my drawing. Okay, and we are in the Layout tab and hit Control V as in Victor. And you want to place your title block and border inside these little dashed lines. That's my print area. See if I can center it correctly. Okay, so it's hard to see there was these little dashed lines on your sheet, and that's your print area. Okay, so now let me go back to my viewport. Double click inside the viewport, and let me go ahead and center my views. It's a lot better. Yeah, I'm missing my dimensions. I can always spread out the views to make more room for my spacing here, and I can double click outside to exit the viewport. Okay, so now let's say we wanted to print our layout with title block and border. Okay, so now we can go back to print. So once again, we are in the Layout tab. So you can see we're in the Layout tab. Okay, go to Print. And now we'll have the option to print layout. So you can see, here we go. Now we have the option to print the layout. Okay, and hit Preview. I don't have a plotter selected. Let's go ahead and pick the plot again. And I'll stay with 8.5 by 11. Okay. Everything looks fine. This looks good. Hit Preview. And there's a preview of what it's going to print. Okay, so once you're ready to print, you can always hit this print option here. Let me close the preview. Or you can always hit OK and it'll print. And once again, when you're ready to print, before you print, go to Plot Line Weights, Plot Width, Plot Styles, and Paper Space Last. So here I do have the option in Layout to click these options. Make sure you pick Monochrome. And let's hit Preview one more time. Preview. You can see the lines are a lot thicker. Looks a lot cleaner. And by picking Monochrome, these light colors will not come out gray. They'll come out with a nice black thin line, thinner than the object lines. Okay, so that's the end of the lecture. And there is no assignment for this lecture.